And we're live.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kat Summers. I am Cat Colette Cat Colors on Instagram. Both are spelled with a K. I'm so excited to be joining BTC today and Schwarzkopf, and I'm going to get right into it. I know that our time is money behind the chair, so I don't want to waste any of your guys' time. I'm going to get right into the nitty-gritty. This is my beautiful model, Johnny, today, and we are doing a blonde retouch on her hair. And later I'm going to be playing around with some fashion colors and doing this really amazing color on her. So be sure to tune in to my stories today so you can see the rest of our process. So I'm going to have you go ahead and turn around, Johnny. So whenever I'm working on a blonde retouch client, I have her sectioned right now in 4 quadrants. And you can see some of our old faded color in here. We got some old blue on the ends. I did have her as a fashion color recently, and so I had her washing her hair a lot warmer right now. So that way we could have a really blank canvas before we start this service. Now, the lightener that I'm going to be using today is definitely one of my favorites. As a classic, we have our Schwarzkopf Blondie. Now, recently, this last year, Schwarzkopf launched a newer product that has just changed the game for any type of on-the-scalp lightening or foil retouches, and that is our Blondie Precision Lightener. We also repackaged it in this cute little square, so that way it's easier for stacking. But what is this lightener going to be best for is going to be a retouch service like this, where we have that really delicate line of demarcation on a platinum blonde, and we want to keep her hair as healthy as possible. I mean, she's got over 2 feet of long hair, long platinum hair with fashion colors, and the last thing I want to do is do anything that's going to jeopardize the integrity of her hair or cause any breakage. And so when I'm going in here, my most important thing is that I'm taking care right now of her delicate hairline. And so a little trick that I like to do is I have this small bowl of the Precision Lightener. It's mixed 1 to 1.5. So that means 1 part of the lightener to 1.5 parts of developer. And instead of using the Blonde Me developer for this little trick that I want to show you guys, this is like learn the rules to break the rules, is I actually used Igora Vibrant 6 volume lotion, and that's going to be just a bit more of a gentle lift for her hairline. That way we're not frying off any little areas right in this length of her hair that's going to be on the edge. And then once I get into the nitty gritty and the meaty part of her hair, about 1 inch off of her hairline, I'm going to go in with my Blonde Me Precision Lightener and 7 volume, and that's also mixed 1 to 1.5. So with the Precision Lightener, I would have to say one of my favorite features of it is going to be where it's the anti-swell. So it's not going to cause, it's a swell control. So a lot of times when it comes to lightener, especially when you're working with the heat of their scalp, that lightener is going to expand a little bit. And we have that line of demarcation that has to be oh so careful with, right? Because once that lightener, if it touches it too long and you're letting it process for 20, 45 minutes, once it sits on that for too long, you can really jeopardize the integrity of your client's hair. So the Precision Lightener with the swell control is going to make sure that as the lightener is applied, it's not going to expand. It's not going to move down the hair. You're not going to come back and rinse, and then all of a sudden it's gooey and, you know, all this like puffiness that you then have to worry about the health of your client's hair. So we're going to start right here in the bottom part of her hairline with that 6 volume. Working on these little baby hairs. Now, one thing that I do like to work with, this is just my own personal preference as an artist. I know I'm still working with that swell control, but another thing that I like to do to really protect myself, to make sure that I'm taking care of their hair the entire time, is I do work with cotton to separate my sections. Now, because I'm working with this the swell control in the Precision Lightener, I don't need to go in and use this big old puffy piece of cotton. So a trick that I like to do is I'll take this cotton and I tear it in half. My camera's right here. So I tear it in half and then just split it all the way down. And an easy way, instead of just sitting here picking apart the cotton, I just grab it, and it creates all these little tiny pieces that will just give me a bit of separation, just to give me that extra added protection in the hair lightening service. So I'm working with the 6 volume first, and I'm going to bring the camera in nice and close here so you can see what we're doing. So I'm working on about 1/4 inch sections right now. And because we have that Precision lightener, I can apply right up to that line of demarcation. I don't have to worry about the swell with this lightener. Such a time saver, also just that extra added security as, this is a very delicate part of the service, right? I don't want anything to happen that's going to make me regret deciding to put lightener on my client's head. So how I personally like to do this is I always want to make sure that these sections are really thoroughly brushed out, because as I'm sectioning through it, the last thing I want to do is snag a piece of hair and then I have to untangle it as I'm working through it. So everything is detangled. I'm still working with that 6 volume right now. And I like to coat the underneath side of my section. This just really ensures that I'm getting a nice even application through and through, front to back on my entire section. And then I'm going to take a little slice, working at a bit of a diagonal. And the reason I'm working at more of a diagonal is it's really customized to her hairline. So she had more of a triangular drop in this part of her hairline. So therefore I'm just working off of the exact shape of her hairline versus forcing it to be something that it's not, and then possibly causing some more unnecessary breakage because I'm trying to force the hair in a direction that it's not naturally wanting to lay. So I like to work with a just nice finishing clip here, nice and smooth, keep all these baby hairs out of my way. Now, the most important part when it comes to a fashion color application, what we're doing on Donnie's hair, or if you're working on a client where you're just trying to get them to a nice, even, bright platinum, is making sure that your client is really staying up to their appointment times, making sure they're coming in most of my clients, I would say, are about every 4 to 6 weeks on a platinum retouch like this. Donnie is a little bit lighter naturally, and I feel like because I'm working with the power of the Blonde Me, I can get away with her coming in sometimes even, about 7 weeks or so. Sometimes we can push it a bit further for her. But it really is up to the discretion of you as the artist and how quickly your client's hair is growing. Because the last thing that you want is for your clients to come in about 10, 12, 13 weeks, 4 months, 5 months, and their line of demarcation is now all the way down here on their shoulders. Because what's going to happen is you're going to lose the heat of their scalp that's going to help this process, and you're going to be creating banding in the hair. And so it's going to have this really bright platinum lift, and then about an inch or two off, it's going to start to get really warm and lift a bit more on the brassier side. So to keep a clean blonde, you really want to not go too far over that regrowth period. So you can see, because again, we're working with that precision lightener, I can go in here and really focus right on that line. Now, I always want to, account for that little bit of swell, but what I've realized working with this product is it really does stay put. It doesn't move. So if you think it's going to swell too much, or you're used to using the swell to fill in and get these little hairs that kind of trickle down and stay a bit darker right on the line of demarcation, you don't need to do that with this lightener. It's going to stay exactly where you apply it. And then here's just our little layer of protection. I don't really squash it down or anything. I just put a light little layer of that half piece of cotton just to give me that extra insurance through any service. So now that I'm about 1.5 inches off of her hairline, now I'm going to go in with the Blonde Me with the 7 volume. So a lot of times when it comes to lightening my client's hair, people will be like, 7 volume, that's crazy. I always use 20 at minimum. And a majority of my clients, actually Johnny happens to be my rare little unicorn, quite literally my rare unicorn because she's a fashion color client. But a majority of my clients actually come in and have my natural level. They're a level 4 and below. And even on those clients that I'm doing a platinum root touch up on, if they're staying blonde, regardless of going fashion colors, I still start with 7 volume. And the reason for that, and maybe you guys have heard this term, is that I like to lift the hair very low and slow. I don't want to go in and cause too much power at the beginning and cause any breakage in the hair. So I realize when I work, and I've actually tried this, where I compare it, where I put like 20 volume on half of the head and 7 on the other half. And the 20 still lifts great. But when I'm working on those dark levels, I feel like I get such a much cleaner lift, really even, not it's not it took its time to really lighten. So it didn't like forcefully make it get too light too quick. And so I've noticed for myself as an artist that I'm able to maintain all quite a bit of the integrity of my client's hair and also get a really beautiful lift when I'm working with Blonde Me and 7 volume. So I know it seems odd to start with such a low developer for some people, and I just, trust me, give it a try, play with it, try it on a friend, family member, mannequin, but low developers are definitely the way to go. So I'm going to bring it back in here so I can show you guys how I'm working here. And if you guys are just tuning in, I am doing a platinum root touch-up utilizing the Blonde Me Precision Lightener. So a couple features about the Blonde Me Precision Lightener, other than the swell control formula that's going to help minimize the swelling, is because we're working in on an on the scalp application right now on Johnny's hair, it does have an integrated temperature balancing complex. And this provides a really pleasant and cooling effect for our client's hair or head. So when you're working with Lightener on your head, if there's ever a client who tends to have a bit more of that sensitive scalp, I've noticed working with the Precision Lightener that because it has that cooling effect in it, it's a much more enjoyable service for them. Definitely one of the biggest things in behind the chair for me is making sure that my clients are comfortable. I don't ever want to do anything that's going to make them like not enjoy the service. Obviously, lightening on the scalp can be a spicy thing that they do because it can get a little bit uncomfortable at times, especially with that really delicate skin. And so I love that that is in this technology as well. Do a small piece of cotton. Now, you are going to expect about up to 7 levels of lift with this lightener, so it is a beastly lightener. I love working with it because it will always get me to that really clean platinum, and I don't really have to overtone or worry about a lot of unwanted warmth in the hair. Obviously, depending on the client's history and the amount of regrowth that you're working with, but this particular lightener is definitely one I recommend to work with on just those root touch-ups and like on the scalp, like foiling applications for a touch-up as well. So these small sections are going to make sure too, if you saw how I just did the back half of the section, now I'm moving this cotton up just a little bit, poking it with my chopstick to make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to lay the hair nice and flat. And then just that solid application. Now, when I have a client coming in for a service like this, I do want to make sure that they're educated on the best way to prep for a service like this as well. I want to make sure that because we are putting, these chemicals on their head, that they're not going in and doing any like deep exfoliating the day before or really scrubbing in there on their scalp too much with their nails or any extra tools or products that are going to really open up any like wounds on their head, because going in with a lightener again is a very delicate service. So making sure I educate my clients, I usually tell them it's okay to wash it the day before. I really don't want them to wash it the day of, because I have noticed when clients have washed their hair the day of, they're a bit more sensitive to any type of lightening, regardless of the lightener I'm working with. So that anti-cooling technology in this lightener is really saving grace for that comfort. So I'm outlining kind of the edge of this section. I'm getting into the thicker part of her hair here. And I always want to be mindful. Everybody's section of their head is going to be maybe slightly different from one another. Maybe how the hair grew. Maybe like around their ear, it's a little bit finer of a hair, or it has a shorter grow out. So sometimes I might angle this cotton more up towards their ear, just to really account for the lack of grow out that there might be in that one section. So now for this part of the service, all I'm going to do for the remaining part of this is I'm really just going to go in and I'm going to finish this entire section. So I like to work in quadrants, and I also personally like to change it up from time to time. As far as like when Johnny comes in next time, I might go in and I'll start on her left section. That way I'm not constantly reapplying the lightener in the same first section every single time, giving that hair a break, giving that hairline a break, changing it up a bit. So I'll go through all 4 quadrants. I like to work in the back first because for obvious reasons, it's a lot easier to rinse the back of a client's head if for some reason this hair lives super well, it's processing nicely, and I just finished applying the front. I don't want her to have to lean forward in the shampoo bowl again for my client's comfort. So I'll apply the back. So as soon as it hits the level that we would like, I will pull the cotton. I like to just do a cross check through the section, make sure there's any little areas that maybe had I didn't apply well enough, and then I will let that sit for about 5-10 minutes under a processing cap to make sure that we're just getting everything fully saturated, and then we go to the shampoo bowl, and then I'm going to rinse, and that's where the service becomes yours at that point. You can tone. I personally, when I'm working with on the scalp lightener, I love to go in and tone with vibrance. I feel like I get some beautiful tones with that, and but today we're going to be playing around with fashion colors. So once I finish this section, I'm going to follow through to this section. I'm going to go to my front 2 sections as well. But a little trick that I want to show you before we get off here is in my front hairline on Johnny, because we're working with these finer parts of her hairline, these hairs tend to be a lot more delicate, and they can tend to be a bit weaker, and I don't want to do anything that's going to sizzle those little guys up where they're just like crinkled and broken all around her face. So before I start applying this section and starting at the bottom, you can see some old bright faded yellow right here, is I will section off about 1 inch around her front hairline, and I'll use one of my really delicate light clips, and I will clip it out of my way, just softly there, and then I'll start applying my lightener in a downward fashion right here. So just like so. So we have this area to stay isolated, so that way I can lighten that section last. Because these hairs are so fine and delicate, if I put that full strength lightener right on here, I feel like it's going to jeopardize her hairline. And if you guys do work with a lot of lightening services, you know that like that area, this is our money piece up here. This is like her face framing. If that hair is fried off and it's short and it's broken, they're not going to be very happy, and they're going to see it right away. So always taking that extra time to account for the delicate parts of the hairline. So I take it completely out of my section. I'll go in, finish both of these top quadrants, and then the very last thing, excuse me, the very last thing that I'll do is work on that front hairline. And that is where I will either work with a little bit of my old 7 volume that I've already mixed and used in this back section or this front section, or say I run out of that and I need a new little batch of lightener for this front part, I will use the 6 volume lotion to be a bit more delicate with that area because that hair lifts so quickly, and I want to make sure that we're taking all of that into account. All right, so that is all I got for you guys today. I'm so excited to finish the rest of this service, and I will again be sharing the rest of my process today with my fashion colors, doing some really cool photos of Johnny, getting her makeup done. It's going to be a whole shebang today. So make sure you tune in on my stories. My Instagram is Cat Colors. It's right down here in the little corner. So both with a K. And I definitely want to thank my fam at Schwarzkopf, and thank you to BTC for having me today.
Thank you so much, Kat. We do have one question before you go, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they were wondering why you started at the bottom versus the top for the back section.
That is an excellent question. So the reason that I prefer to start at the bottom versus the top is, honestly, for me as an artist, it's not wrong if you guys decide to start at the top. But for me, what makes sense is because of how gravity is working in this section, starting at the bottom really allows me to not agitate these sections that are so delicately laid once they're already there. I feel like when I've started in the top, for example, if I'm up here, what ends up happening is I'm laying it over, whatever direction you go. but then you have to move all of it again, because then you have to color these front sections. So once you move it, you then risk that lightener shifting a little bit. Even working with the precision lightener from Blonde Me, moving it can still cause an area to overlap or lay on top of it how you didn't initially intend. But because I know that these sections are now going to process exactly where I laid them, it allows me to let them develop and stay precisely where I laid them. So it works really well for me as an artist to just not allow them to shift around.
Perfect. Thank you, Kat, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.